So in second grade, my buddy has a broken leg from a skiing accident. He comes back after being gone 2 weeks. We're hanging out together on the sand like we do in second grade. He takes off his shoe and he welcomes himself back to me and he goes, "Hey, Scott, it's good to see you." He throws it at me. What kids do. So I picked it back up as his best friend and I threw it back at him. But I re-broke his leg. So in second grade, I was escorted to the principal's office. I was now famous at a very young age for all the wrong reasons. And I remember they called my parents. They all had to come down, said, "Your son has broken a kid's leg." And my mom and dad, they're working people, said, "How did he do that?" And they just described the circumstances. And bottom line was I was in trouble. And they said, "We've had some issues with your son. We think it might be time for him to go to another school." So I move on to another school at third grade. And my second day there, the teacher says, "Mr. Silverman," it was one of those formal schools, "would you mind going to the map and pointing out the Pacific Ocean?" And I'm thinking, I can do this. I have a 50-50 chance of getting it wrong. So I go and point out the Atlantic. I got it wrong, and everybody in the class started to laugh at me. I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but it happened to me, and it felt like it went on for an hour. I went back to my desk. It was one of those schools where the old desk folded up, and I broke all my pencils, and I threw them at everybody in the classroom. And from that day forward, I said, you know what? I'm not going to let kids laugh at me again. When you're that young and you have to start thinking like that, and you're hearing things like, "No, you can't. No, you're not smart enough. No, you're not ready for this school. You have to go to that school. And why can't you be as smart as, say, this person or that person?" It starts to have an impact on you. So I go through some testing, like a lot of kids do, and they find out that I have ADHD, and I have an 8-second attention span, which is really good for TEDx because you have to be able to do all that to handle all the multiple tasks that take place at one of these conferences. So the good news is they had a diagnosis, but back in those days, they weren't sure what to do with it. So I continued to go on. I got a little bit of trouble. Time went on. I got in more trouble. 5th grade, I had a teacher actually had a heart attack. They wanted to blame me. Yep, I've always had special tension as a kid growing up. And anyway, fast forwarding, I'm 17 years old. They sent me to a psychologist. And this guy says, based in second session, based on everything I've heard and read, and your parents, we talked, you're basically not doing really well on this planet. Correct. I said, "Are you suggesting I go to another planet?" I said, "Some days I feel like I was brought here." How many of you have felt like you've been brought here from another planet? Yeah, it happens. So anyway, he says, "You're not doing really well. You're basically a failure. What you should do," 17 years old, "what you should do is you should just be the best failure you can be." And I thought, shut the front door. What does that mean? Be the best failure you can be. So I translated it to that. That's it. I'm done with this planet. I'm going to start doing things my way. And like a lot of young people, I got involved with things I shouldn't have. I'd like to say art and architecture and drawing, but no, it was more Mr. Marijuana, Miss Cocaine, and other things that I started to bring into my system that helped me not feel the feelings. So, takes me to my next point. I created a new hobby for myself, and that was substance abuse around my heavy work that I did. And being an addict, if you will, I get a chance to do a lot of great things to extremes. And I get a lot of opportunity to do a lot of things in a short period of time because I'm compulsive, obsessive, and addictive, unlike some of my co-speakers who are calm, mellow, and easy to get along with. So I have this issue. It's growing into my 20s. It's getting worse. It's getting worse. So I decided to try to dry out and substituted. Then I got into food. Then I got into methamphetamine. Then I tried art. Became actually a metal artist, which I just picked up recently, and I'm very excited about it. It's very therapeutic. And I took this trip. It was a trip planned with the business I was involved with to go back to New York and to meet people and do our thing for a week. But what happened for me was starting the second day, I started drinking heavily, and I went into a blackout for 4 days. The last day of our trip, I was picked up by the law enforcement, New York's finest, taken back to my hotel. It was explained to me when I called down. I said, "Hi, this is Mr. Silverman. Could you please tell me where my airline ticket is and my traveler's checks and my ID? I think I've been robbed." And they go, "Oh, Mr. Silverman, we're waiting for your call. Please come down as soon as you can. Security would like to speak with you." So I go down. They say graciously, "We would like to invite you, never, ever come back to our hotel again." Law enforcement picked you up, brought you in. I was in a 3-piece suit with my London fog, raincoat, passed out like a drunk does or did, and that happened to me. I won't ask how many hands it's happened to in the room today. And I wasn't sure what to do. They explained to me that this is what took place. You're lucky you weren't put into jail, and the reason was I carried a badge during those days. That badge was gold and silver, and there happened to be an undercover law enforcement conference in Manhattan, because I was literally picked up across the train station. So I put my last outfit on I had the night before, and I went to this business meeting. And bottom line was, I had no idea how I was going to explain to the 14 people I was traveling with where I'd been for 4 days and what I was going to explain to them as to what I was going to do next, because everyone wondered where I'd been. So I decided I need to get some air. I'm on the 44th floor of this building, downtown Manhattan, and I know I needed to get some air. I was just choking. My pores were sweating alcohol, and it had been a couple of years of just horrible obsession of drinking and using. But I was functional because I kept a job. So it was kind of hidden, if you will. So I get to the windowsill, and I'm thinking, you know, if I close my eyes, if I lean back, I can end all this pain. It'll be over. I'll be finished. I won't have to explain to anybody anymore. I won't have to make phone calls anymore. My wife won't have to make apologies for me on Sunday mornings after big events. So I'm pushing myself to the edge of the windowsill. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. I kind of said goodbye to my family. And as I'm right there at the edge, and I knew in 8 seconds it'd be over, this guy walks into his office. He said, "What are you doing? You're going to fall out the window." You've heard of the term divine intervention. My life started over at that second. I said, "Just give me a second, I'm just getting some air." I had an emotional breakdown. I started to cry. I called my wife and I said, "I'm ready." Friday night I flew home. Next day I was put into rehab voluntarily. And if all goes well, first week in June, I'll be celebrating 26 and a half years of continuous sobriety. I share that because the work that I do today is transformational with human beings. As a matter of fact, a couple of years ago, I was at a Rotary Club, and I thought, God, I work with hard-to-serve individuals. I work with people who've been unemployed. I work with individuals coming out of prison. I work with people who've never been employed and underemployed. Actually, I even work with unlicensed pharmacists. So it's a unique population. And what I wanted to do is I thought, you know what, I'm going to speak up. I'm going to say, you know what, folks, I'm doing something different in the field of nonprofit work. I'm actually a recycler. They said, really? What do you recycle? Oh, human beings. But I just learned a new term from one of my colleagues that will be sharing today. I hope he doesn't mind I use the term. I heard about upcycling. You know, recycling is taking something and finding a different use for it. Upcycling is finding not only material that needs to be used again, but actually finding something that you can improve its use. So that's really what I am today, an upcycler, if you will, to be environmentally friendly, because I wanted to stand out when people say, oh, you work in a nonprofit organization. And I want to tell you about that nonprofit organization. I started 18 years ago. I was working at a feeding kitchen on Sunday mornings, and these people would come through every single week, thousands. And my people fed on Sunday because we were finished praying on Friday. I told you that earlier, for those who can't put that together. So anyway, Sunday morning, 5 o'clock, I'd get up, go down, and I'd feed people every single week. And I'd see thousands. And I said, one day, why are these people here? Why aren't they getting a job? They're not getting a job because they don't want one, is what the volunteers told me. So I started talking to a few of the folks. I said, hey, why aren't you working? Oh, look at me. No one will hire me. I'm on parole. I have a drug problem. I'm on a 12-step program. You know, I have tattoos. I said, well, I'll help you. You will? Yeah, what do I have to do? I said, you have to cut your hair, shave the stuff off your face, roll down your sleeves, cover your tats, and change your attitude. What's wrong with my attitude? I said, that's it. I'm walking away. I walked away. Bottom line is, I'll see you next week. He goes, I'm not done talking to you. I've been married a while at the time. I said, well, I'm done talking to you. I knew how to handle myself. So he comes back, you know, and he's being told no. But I wasn't telling him no. I was suggesting that some sort of simple change can end up making a big difference. Are you willing to do it? And he finally came around, and I didn't see him. And he comes back a couple of months later. I said, where you been? He goes, you're not going to believe it. I got a job. I said, really? How'd you do that? He goes, everything you suggested worked. How can I help you? And I said, come here with me on Sunday afternoons, share your story. Share your story. So a year goes by, I'm doing this, and I can't find a way to make this scalable. How do I find a way to get a toolbox, if you will, to help people? It's too hard. 50 people every Sunday, I need a mechanism. So I went to all the nonprofits in the community and said, look, I'd like to partner with you. And they said, what do you mean? I said, well, I'd like to help you. I'll help provide the job expertise and the housing, and you just do the rest of the things you do. Well, wait a second. If you do that and our clients get jobs and they get access to affordable housing, what will we do? I said, what? I went home that night. I had the worst case of the, I promised, actually one of my notes is don't swear, so I'm not going to say. I had the worst case of the oh my gods. Replace that on your twits any way you'd like. And I said to my wife, I'd like to start a nonprofit. She says, you have no idea what you're talking about. I said, I know. That means I have nothing I can really screw up because I have a baseline of zero knowledge. Again, I get my no. So I went to the library, opened up a book on how to start a nonprofit, and that's how Second Chance got started. Because I believe everyone deserves a second chance. So with that, what I want to say is, life ain't fair. It ain't never going to be fair. Eat it, swallow it, accept it. And what that means to me is I can't change yesterday. I'm not God. That job is taken. So I started this agency. I started helping people get back in the workforce. 3 things that really work well. Evidence-based outcome, field tested, which is slang for it. Don't mess with me because I got the data. You help somebody and they get an address because you've got to have an address to get a job. You've got to have a job to keep an address. And you give them some support services for a longer period of time than more than 30 days. It works. So we have this model we want to grow, and I want to figure out a way to do that, and I'm going to do that, and hopefully it's going to start today with all of you. No pressure, but I am a nonprofit leader. Our job is to ask for your time, your talent, your treasury, because that's what communities are all about. And you heard it already this morning, you're going to hear more of it this afternoon, and that's what I try to do. I bring my time and my talent, because my wife's in real estate, so we've lost our treasury for now. I only say that because she's got the day off and she's sitting up there not taking pictures, and I asked her to. So again, I seem to bump into these no's all the time. Why no? And part of my talk today is about how to get to yes. How to get to your yes. You have to make a commitment. You really do. And one of the things I love the most about, I've got these 5 keys in this book I've created, and one of them is learning how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Quick story about a guy named Dominic Ludi. I was called a few years back by the Padres. They said, Scott, we'd like to have you throw out the first pitch. Talk about obesity. I used to weigh 330 pounds. This stage would not be holding me if I was here a few years ago. So I said, I'm kind of not in good shape. I don't think I should do it. But I said, one of our graduates actually works for the Padres organization. He's legally blind. He comes to our classroom. He says, will you help me get a job? I'm tired of living off the federal government. And I said, absolutely. We get him this job. He passes out the flyers at the bottom of the escalator at the old Qualcomm Stadium. Does an awesome job. So I said, what? I'd like to see Dominic Ludi come out and pitch, but there's a problem. They go, what's that? He goes, he's legally blind. The front office says, the way the Padres are pitching, he'll fit right in. So Dominic didn't go throw the pitch. I didn't either. We picked somebody else, Anthony Foster, who, after 14 years is still working. So to be part of something that works, to be part of something that we think is scalable and transformational, I know we can take it to the next level. At the end of the day, one of the things I think of myself as is a social entrepreneur, and I like to build human capital. So I hope you'll join me, and remember, don't let anybody take your yes away. Tell me no, I dare you.